Hey, hello, welcome back to Unqualified Analysis, the show with zero qualifications, zero credentials, just about zero energy left. And hey, job search still going on. A little bit more momentum this time, though. Still stressful, but a little bit more momentum. That is besides the point. This is the hour and change of the week where I just get to turn my mind off and think about sports, just think about the things that stress me out a little bit less than searching for jobs. So let's get into it, guys. I'm your host, Caleb Verzak. You can follow me on all my socials at, you guessed it, Caleb Verzak. Link will be down in the description, so you have to spell that messed up Eastern Bloc name. We're on YouTube now, baby. Can't be doing all of this cursing up top here. Also, you may notice, you probably don't notice, so I'm not even going to get into it actually. My mind's all over the place right now. A little bit of fatigue leads to some less than linear thought processes. So I'm trying to keep this episode to a reasonable length because we got a lot going on for you. But hey, before we get into that, subscribe wherever you're listening to this. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon. Hell, you can subscribe to all of them if you so choose. But yeah, the plugs are over. We got a loaded episode of playoffs and headlines, mostly playoffs because there's just a whole lot going on between the play-in, the playoffs proper. So that'll take up probably most of this episode, but we got some good headlines for you in the NFL leading up to the draft. We got some signings. We got a big signing that just came across the docket here today, so we'll have to get into that and more throughout the course of this episode. But no more further bloviating for the interest of not keeping this, or keeping this under an hour 40, hopefully an hour 30 when it's all said and done. Let's just crack straight into it. We're starting with the NBA playoffs and the play-in games. Had to get a sip of that ice-cold caffeinated drink that's going to get me through the course of this episode talking about sports to y'all. But first and foremost, talking about the play-in games, just go chronological order here. Starting with the Hawks, they beat the Heat 116-105 to secure the 7th seed in the East. No one on the Hawks really lit the world on fire offensively, but the role players balled out in their own individual lanes. You talk about Clint Capella. He had 21 rebounds, only had 3 shots all game, but had 21 rebounds, 8 offensive rebounds, 2 blocks throughout the game. Could not have really played better in what they asked him to do throughout the course of that one. Also, 2020 lottery pick Onyeka Okongwu. Hope you're proud of me for pronouncing that name correctly. But he went 5 of 6 from the floor, racked up 4 block shots. And the true separator in this game, just bad offense from the Heat when it's all said and done. Just plain and simple. Jimmy Butler had a bad game shooting 6 of 19 from the floor. And the Heat continued their trend of just bad three-point shooting. They were one of the worst teams in the league all season shooting threes. Shot 32.4% from the three-point range when in this game in particular, and it showed on the scoreboard. Double elimination for the Heat, though. So the Hawks, they locked in that 7th seed. The Heat, though, still had one more game against the winner of the 8-9 matchup. Hawks play the Celtics round 1. Already talked about that. The Heat await the winner of Bulls Raptors. Now we'll go over to the western side of the play-in bracket for the 7th seed. Over there, it was the T-Wolves and the Lakers, and the T-Wolves, hey, they had it in control for a lot of this game, just coughed one up down the stretch, and the Lakers won 108-102 in overtime to secure the 7th seed. No Rudy Gobert, as you may remember, as he served that one-game suspension for the sideline punch to Kyle Anderson's chest, right in the titties. Probably hurt him real bad in the feelings there when it was all said and done. But that cost him the first game in this play-in, whatever the hell you want to call it. I'm still unsure what's a playoff and I know what's a playoff and what's a play-in, but do we count the play-in as a playoff? Because really, if you think about it, play-in's more of a playoff atmosphere than the actual first round until you get to the elimination games in the first round series. Hey, 7-game series in the first round, basically single-game elimination if you're playing, double elimination, but you get it. It's like a win or go home sort of situation here in the play-in, much more so than the actual first round proper. So you get a little bit more desperation down the stretch, especially when you get into those elimination games, the 9-10 games, the play-in game for the 8th seed. We'll get to all that in just a second. But Karl Anthony Towns completely disappeared down the stretch in this one against the Lakers. Anthony Edwards shot 5 of 17 for the game. Timberwolves scored 12. Count them, 12 points in the fourth quarter. Lakers didn't light the world on fire, but they outscored the Wolves 29-16 in the fourth quarter and overtime combined. That's just not going to win you a whole lot of games if you're Minnesota and the Timberwolves. Lakers play the Grizzlies in round one. T-Wolves were awaiting the winner of, I believe it was the Pelicans and the youngest team in the entire NBA at this point, the Oklahoma City Thunder, but we'll get to that in just a second. Now, first off, on the east side, the 9-10 matchup, the Bulls sent the Raptors home 109-105 behind DeMar DeRozan's blood-curdling screeches, man. It was something to behold, and I might have a little bit of a different opinion than most people on this, but DeMar DeRozan brought his daughter, DeMar DeRozan, to the game in Toronto. A lot of history there. Obviously, DeMar DeRozan spent like the first, 8 years of his career in Toronto, something like that. A lot of history there. Fans love him there. A lot of appreciation. Obviously, the security, all the fans there, they know DR. I assume she was just a little bitty girl whenever she was living in Toronto, but they remember DR. They know DR, and they respect DeMar, so they're not going to really say anything to like an 8-year-old kid when she's doing some stuff in the stands, but brought her to the game up in Toronto, and while everyone else in that home crowd in Toronto just stayed quiet for the Raptors at the free throw line, she took full advantage of that silence to project the type of just ungodly screech that only a small child is really capable of when it's all said and done. You know the small child screech, and it is something that'll haunt your nightmares, and I'm sure it's going to be haunting the nightmares of the Toronto Raptors all off season here. Probably wasn't the only factor, but it'd be hard not to be distracted when there's that kind of just blood-curdling, awful sound happening every single time you go up for a free throw. The Raptors had one of the worst free throw shooting performances ever in a playoff scenario, shooting 18 of 36 at the line. 50% in a playoff game. Again, whatever you want to call it, just not going to cut it. This was win or go home, and to do that in this setting, sure, the Raptors weren't really going to go anywhere when it was all said and done, but you're certainly not going to win a game when you're shooting 50% from the free throw line. Hell, that's probably going to lose you a lot of games in the college setting, let alone at the NBA level. Also, Zach LaVine had a monster game, which gave the Bulls the edge on top of that Raptors' horrid free throw shooting. And, I'm going to say it right now, good for DeMar DeRozan getting the tour around the sports sphere, if you will, made her rounds around, well, not interviewing, but, the highlight made the rounds around Sports Center, made the rounds around all the notable sports podcasts out there. I cannot be the only one that absolutely hated that, right? I mean, call me a curmudgeon, call me a negative Nancy over here, but there are a few sounds worse in the entire world than a little kid screeching, and she did it every single time the Raptors went to the free throw line. You know what? I'm not about abusing kids on this podcast, so I'm not going to say some of the creeping internal thoughts that I had as the game wore on. But I'll tell you right now, it got pretty annoying pretty fast, and I cannot be the only one that thought that way. I mean, DeMar DeRozan, good for her for getting involved in the game where she could. But let's just say I'm glad she was not allowed to be in Miami in the next play-in game. A little bit of foreshadowing. We already knew Miami was waiting on the winner of this game here. So, you know what? Good for my ears. Maybe not everyone else in their sick obsession with these storylines. And I don't even know what I'm really trying to say there. But just glad I didn't have to hear the ungodly screeches in that other play-in game. We'll get to that here in just a second. We got the 9-10 matchup on the west side. Thunder sent the Pelicans home 123-118 in that matchup, bringing a disappointing season to a close and shining a bit of an uncomfortable spotlight on one Zion Williamson, who was, he was at the game, but he was absent from the court as per the last several months or so. And I'm honesty hour, hand up, barely watched this second game. I mean, it's these 10 p.m. tip-offs, they're a crime against humanity. I'm telling you right now, arrest whoever is in charge of scheduling and putting specifically these play-in games in this 10 p.m. slot. It's different when it's the Warriors-Kings. That was an absolute banger in round one. We'll get to that here in just a bit. But with these play-in games, a 9-10 matchup, if it were a legit playoff matchup, like I said, the Kings-Warriors, that would be one thing. But neither of these teams, not the Thunder, not the Pelicans, are going to make a deep run. So I just couldn't be asked to watch this. I've been tired for the past like week and a half or so. Like I said, job search, very stressful time, causing me to lose a little bit of sleep here and there. So I get it. I get as much sleep as I can, where I can. And you know what? I just didn't feel like sacrificing good sleep hours watching this particular game. It was admittedly a good game, and if it were my only job to watch sports, I'm sure I'd be up watching it, but I got my own stuff going on. So, I passed. Couldn't be asked to watch it. But the Thunder advanced to set up a matchup with the Timberwolves for the 8th seed. I'm not really going to talk about the game proper because again, didn't really watch it. Sorry about it. Sports podcast doing a bad job watching the sports, but I watched a whole bunch of other games, so sue me. Yeah. And again, neither of these teams are really going anywhere. And you know what? Maybe, just maybe, well, you already know if you're listening to this podcast by now, they didn't even make it out of the play-in, so not even really worth getting into that much. But the real story of this game, both leading up to the game and coming out of it, were the quotes from Zion Williamson in a post-practice media, I think is like either post-practice, pre-game media scrum, something like that. But the moral of the story here, or crux of the issue, when asked for a timeline on when he'll be back on the court, or when he feels like he'll be back on the court, he essentially just said, when I feel like Zion again, I'll be back, which, for the longest time, the onus was seemingly on the team for being a little bit overly cautious on how they brought him back from injuries. But meanwhile, he was seen doing windmill dunks and pregame layup lines of the play-in game. A terrible look both in the media and I would assume behind the scenes as well in the locker room with his teammates. Flat out, this is a roster that should be competing at the top of the Western Conference. When he was in the lineup early in the season, they were either the 1 seed or the 2 seed. I think they were like 29-18, something like that. One of the best teams in the entire Western Conference. If Zion is in the fold, they should be competing for a Western Conference title, for possibly an NBA title. But as it stands, they were in the play-in, got bounced out by the youngest team in the NBA, who weren't even expected to sniff the playoffs when Chet Holmgren went down preseason for the year with an ankle injury, foot injury, one of those things. Just tall, skinny guy stuff. He had to have the red shirt year to, I don't know, put on some weight and be injured, I suppose. But for a long time, the narrative surrounding the Pelicans was that the Pelicans organization was using an abundance of caution when working Zion back into the fold. Obviously, from some of the more toxic fans, and hand up, I might be one of those guys. They were talking about his weight, talking about the sustainability, that sort of weight, and the style of explosivity that Zion Williamson plays with. How long is that going to last? Is that sustainable? I think it's been a lingering conversation about a big contributing factor as to why he hasn't been healthy throughout the course of his career. But I think by and large, fans have been understanding up until this point. But that seems to have shifted to Zion holding himself out when he could be helping his team. And I think the fans are getting a little bit impatient. It's going to be a loud, uncomfortable offseason for Zion Williamson. And God help him if he shows up to training camp overweight again. It's going to be very important for him. I feel like it wasn't always like this, but it's really shifted over the course of the last week. Those quotes did not help him at all. I mean, watching him do windmill dunks in the layup line, that's helping nobody. Someone's got to get in his ear and tell him, hey, maybe just don't participate in the pregame stuff like that if you aren't going to play in the game, because it's going to create a whole lot of hubbub that you just don't want in your life right now. But more power to him for doing it. I would not have done it myself. And when it's all said and done here, he's got to make a big change. He's got to make a change in his diet. He's got to drop weight flat out, and he's got to show that he really wants to be out there, because that quote, when I feel like Zion, I'll be back, he was obviously healthy enough to go out there and play in some capacity. Maybe he wouldn't have been as explosive as he was before his hamstring injury. But he's got to be out there. It's the playoffs. It's you're playing with the season on the line. You've got to be out there if you can be. And I would assume those are conversations that he had with his teammates in the locker room at some point. It's probably getting kind of uncomfortable in the locker room at this point. It's going to get a whole lot more uncomfortable in the media if he keeps doing this sort of stuff. the fans have been relatively patient and understanding up until this point. Again, there have been rumblings before about his weight and whatnot, but this point just feels like the patience is at a breaking point. I probably could not have butchered that any more than what I did there, but it feels like we are at an inflection point of, hey, it is either have a full season of health, show that you are willing to change in order to get this thing done and play consistently at an NBA level, or I feel like the Pelicans are going to have to start looking elsewhere, seeing what they can get for him in a trade, because you just can't keep going out here season after season and body just imploding. Nothing changes diet or weight-wise. He's just a big boy who's explosive, but carrying too much weight to play a whole lot at the NBA level. This is the most critical offseason of Zion Williams' young career. Flat out, he needs to have a big offseason with some big changes being made if he wants to continue living a comfortable life. I'll just put it that way, because it's about to get loud. It's about to get very uncomfortable from here going forward. But with that, let's get into the rest of the play-in tournament. I just had to stop off there, talk about the Zion situation, because again, it is going to get loud and it is going to get uncomfortable as this offseason goes on. No two ways about it. He's got to show some real progress as this thing goes on. But hey, talking about the Heat, talking about that Eastern Conference, this one was for the 8th seed. The Heat dominated the fourth quarter versus the Bulls, lock up the 8th seed in a 102-91 victory over those aforementioned Bulls. Like I said before, DeAndre DeRozan had a school night, so she wasn't allowed to come to the game in Miami. The Heat took full advantage of not having those hellacious screeches in their ear every time they went up for a free throw. Bulls actually had a 1-point lead going into the fourth, but without the unholy screeches that DR put out there, the defense faltered down the stretch, man. The Heat shot 28 of 32 from the line, and I just can't imagine that would have happened if DeAndre DeRozan was out there just putting the fear of God in their hearts every time they went up for a shot. But neither team played particularly well on offense for the first three quarters. I mean, there's a reason it was, 102-91 as the final score. But in the fourth quarter, the Heat caught fire here. I mean, no pun intended, but they scored 35 in the fourth quarter, just broke open the lead here, ended up winning comfortably. The Heat locked up the 8th seed and now play the Bucks in the first round. And after all that, we got chalk in the Eastern Conference for the most part. The Hawks ended up winning the 7th seed when they would have been the 8th seed, but it was still the 7th and 8th seeds on the Eastern Conference ended up getting those 7th and 8th seeds when it was all said and done. When it's all said and done, that's the phrase of the day. When it's all said and done. I'm trying to eliminate that, but no promises. I'm a big old amateur. That's what we call it, unqualified analysis, ladies and gentlemen. Anyways, let's keep moving down to the 8th seed game in the Western Conference. This one was a snoozer. The T-Wolves dominated the Thunder 120-95. They lock up the 8th seed and have the privilege of going up against the Denver Nuggets. Oh, by the way, the Heat have the privilege of playing the Milwaukee Bucks, which that series a little bit more interesting than I may have given it credit for last week, but we'll talk about that again in just a second here. Got to talk about the T-Wolves dominating the Thunder first off. Also, a little bit of a side note here. I didn't realize that the Thunder had two Jalen Williamses. One, Jaylin, Jalen, and you got a Jalen, Jalen. Both Jalen Williams, both very confusing to me. Both of them drafted this year, one in the first round, one in the second round. They were the only two starters to shoot above 50%. Still seems mildly confusing and unnecessarily so for the fans at home. Maybe we don't draft two Jalen Williamses in the same draft, because you can't just differentiate and say, hey, rookie Jalen Williams, because they're both rookies. Not really helpful when you're talking about who the guys are. J as in Jay. I don't know how you differentiate as a broadcast. This must have been the most confusing season to listen to of all time if you're an OKC fan listening to a radio broadcast, because you're just thinking, which Jalen made what play and what the hell is going on at any given amount of time? I don't personally know how you deal with that if you're a fan at home, or if you're a radio broadcaster for that matter, because that's just an ungodly amount of confusion right there, but I digress. Also, like I said, those were the only two guys. Both Jalen's the only two guys in the starting lineup for the Thunder to shoot over 50% or better from the or 50% or better from the field. Shout out Lou Dort though, he did all right. I mean, 6 of 14, 4 for 8 from 3, had like 17 points. Still lost by 25, though, so it doesn't really matter. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander went 5 for 19 from the field in this game. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, if you didn't know, best player on the Thunder team right now. I mean, one of the top scorers in the NBA from this past season. He only shot 5 for 19 from the field. Josh Giddey also went 2 for 13. Those are your two best offensive players, and it's just simply not sustainable to have both of those guys shooting badly from the field and think that you're going to be competing, especially when you just don't really defend much like the Thunder do. They were an over machine this year, I'll tell you that right now, but youngest team in the NBA, got some elimination game experience. Overall, it's a wildly successful season compared to what they expected coming in. They were expected to kind of tank, maybe in the shun victory for Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes over there. Now, not quite in that boat, but you think about it, you got Chet Holmgren coming back off of injury next year. You got a relatively hot, you got a mid-first round draft pick next year. Oh, in addition to, I mean, the Thunder just basically traded everybody and got 1 million first-round picks. I think they have like 4 first-round picks next year in the draft. So they're going to be loading up on talent. You will not hear this is not the last you will be hearing of the Oklahoma City Thunder over the next couple years. They are going to be good in short order, but meanwhile, the Timberwolves shot over 50% from the field in this game, 40% from 3, 80% from the free throw line. Rudy Gobert made some solid contributions in his return, scoring 21. Karl-Anthony Towns redeemed his poor performance versus the Lakers, scored 28 with 3 blocks. And the T-Wolves lock up that 8 seed, play the Nuggets in the first round. And with that, there you have it. The 7 seed in the East, the Hawks, and the 8 seed, the Heat. 7 seed in the West, you've got the, already forgot, what, Lakers. How could I forget the Lakers and LeBron James, all that's going on there. And at the 8 seed, you've got the T-Wolves. There you have it for the play-in game. Let's just bust right into the first round, shall we? We have got, first off, going in chronological order, once again, the 76ers absolutely beat the holy hell out of the Nets, 121-101 in game 1 of the 3-6 matchup in the East. 76ers take a 1-0 lead. Bottom line, Nets got to this point mostly on the back of what KD and Kyrie did before they got traded at the trade deadline. This roster should not be a 6 seed, should not be a playoff roster. They were really, when you look at it, more of a fringe play-in tournament type of a team. They're going to probably have a rebuilding year next year because they're devoid of stars. They have a couple really solid guys, Mikal Bridges, a couple other guys out there as well. Dorian Finney-Smith, a solid role player. Geez, my nose is itching up a storm, but I digress on that front. But really, you just look at it, they're outgunned, outmatched at basically every position versus the Sixers. I mean, my God, who are you putting up against Joel Embiid in this series? Not a single guy on the Nets that I trust to go up against Joel Embiid. It's going to be not a long series, but it's going to be a long 4 games, I would imagine. I would expect Philly to handle business fairly quickly in this one. You can never discount the possibility. These are pro players, after all. You can never discount the possibility of it going 5 games, a gentleman's sweep. But if it goes more than 5 games, I will be absolutely shocked. I think the 76ers should cruise into the second round to play whoever they end up playing when they get there. The Celtics handle business in game 1 versus the Hawks, 112-99. Another kind of a snoozer in the 2-7 matchup in the East, but a little bit more competitive, I guess. I mean, at least the Hawks, they feel like a 7 seed. They feel like someone that is kind of properly seated in that 7th and 8th range. So, yeah, maybe a little bit more of what you would expect, but not quite as much of a personnel mismatch in this series between the as it was in the Sixers and Nets. They're built around a small guard, though, are the Hawks, who jacks up a ton of questionable shots and doesn't defend particularly well. The Hawks are the Hawks, man. Meanwhile, the Celtics are a legit championship contender. They got Jason Tatum. They got Jaylen Brown. They've got all the accompanying players that they got going over there. I mean, Al Horford. They're a deep, deep team with a very, very good top end. Top 2 in both offense and defense throughout the regular season. Maybe Trae Young catches fire in one of these games and they steal a win somewhere along the line, but I have a hard time seeing this go more than 5. I think 5 is probably the number. If they go 6, I mean, hey, pat yourself on the back, Trae Young. You did a good job. You probably went insane for a couple games, but the Celtics are just head and shoulders a better team than what the Hawks are right now. So they should take care of business in the first round as long as they don't completely implode. Also, barring injuries, you got to, Knock on wood there. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but yeah, knocking on wood that no one gets injured. No one wants to see anyone get injured, so we'll leave it at that. Celtics starting out strong, starting out the way you expect them to start out in this series. Geez, my nose will not stop itching, and I don't know why. Here we are, though, people. Here we are. Let's just keep it moving. The Knicks won an absolute banger, 101-97 to take a 1-0 lead in the 4-5 matchup in the East. All of these happening on Saturday, I want to say. But hey, absolute battle between Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson down the stretch in this one. This is what playoff basketball is all about. The 4-5 matchups, usually the best series in the entire first round on both sides of the bracket. And this one did not disappoint. Didn't disappoint on the Western side either, but we'll get to that in just a bit. This was the first game of the playoffs that truly felt like a playoff game. Obviously, you had the Lakers and T-Wolves playing a knockdown, drag-out one in the play-in game, but we're in the playoffs proper now. We're talking about 7-game series, and this one felt like a dandy. I'll tell you what, the Knicks and Cavs were so evenly matched on both of them defending their asses off, and when the lights got brightest, the leaders on both of these teams showed up when it counted. Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson just battled down the stretch, and it looked for a minute that Donovan Mitchell was going to will the Cavs to victory, but ultimately, Jalen Brunson made some clutch shots in the final minutes to secure Game 1 and steal a road win. Really, really solid game. I loved this game. I was excited all throughout. I was watching Donovan Mitchell. I tweeted out Donovan Mitchell is a dog because he's got a look in his eyes when he's playing, or really just playing in the playoffs in general, where you just see he could burn holes through somebody if he's not careful with the look that he gave. I mean, just the whole crowd, anything. He was there to win the game, and he wanted it badly, and you could see it. But not Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson on the other side, just unflappable. I mean, not quite the stone face that Kawhi Leonard is, but just never seems fazed by anything is Jalen Brunson. And he had a little bit of a cold stretch that, Donovan Mitchell during that stretch was absolutely blazing hot out of his mind. But you know what? When it counted in the final 2 minutes of the game, Jalen Brunson just showed up, and it was the difference maker when you got down to the end of it here. It's why the Knicks ended up winning by 4 points. This one might be one of the best series in the East, well, probably the best series in the Eastern Conference, one of the best series in the first round. Like I said, the 4-5 matchup, usually on both sides of the bracket, generally is. I will actually be disappointed if this one doesn't go 6 or 7 games. It was a dandy of a game 1. Looking forward to hopefully a dandy of a game 2. Is that tonight? I don't know. I should probably look that up at some point. But I got the ESPN website up here right now, so let's just go look at it. Nope, no game for them tonight. We're getting down to 2 games tonight. Spreading this thing out, really milking the teat of the money cow here. I understand an NBA. You got to do what you got to do. Still, let's see what that tip-off is. 10 p.m. tip-off for Warriors Kings. Just unacceptable. I mean, sure, a little bit better, but unacceptable. I digress on that front, though. Let's talk about that Warriors Kings game 1, though. It was on Saturday. It was still a 10 p.m. tip, so I can't really, it wasn't awesome, but at the same time, these are 2 very good teams that just shoot the lights out of the ball. The Kings never defend worth a damn, and it was just fun up and down the court basketball this whole time. But the Kings won game 1 of the weekend, or won the game of the weekend, rather, 126-123 over the Warriors to take a 1-0 lead in the 3-6 matchup on the western side of the bracket. And man, I mean, I was laying in bed. By the end of this, I wanted to go to sleep, but the game itself just would not let me. It was just too compelling. I mean, De'Aaron Fox and Steph Curry just went head-to-head in the fourth quarter. Malik Monk played out of his mind, 32 points on 13 shots in this game. I'm not sure if that's something you could expect in game 2, but it's just one of those games. Every once in a while, and you saw even when Malik Monk was at Kentucky in college, he might not be the most consistent player in the world, but when his shot is on and he is playing up to his potential, he is one of the most exciting players in the entire NBA, and Malik Monk was on fire in this game. Like I said, 32 points on 13 shots. De'Aaron Fox was absolutely spectacular in this one. 38 points in his playoff debut, including some clutch buckets, geez, easy for me to say, down this stretch of this one. I hope that the Kings beat the piss out of the Warriors with the rating storylines, rhetoric that the media pundits keep putting out there right now. I mean, I'm hearing, I don't want to name names, but they know who they are, talking about, oh man, we need the Kings to take one for the team. We're trying to break the beam here, trying to keep them out of the second round. It's going to be a ratings bonanza if we have the Warriors versus the Grizzlies, or the Warriors versus the Lakers. We're all about our ratings here. Oh man, it helps people get hired and fired. I don't give a damn about that sort of thing. So I'm here for great basketball and entertaining basketball. And you know what? The Kings don't defend worth a damn, and that's the one knock on them as a team right now, I would say, outside of, a couple more on-court stuff. We'll get to that in just a second. But that lack of a defense, in addition to them being one of the best offensive teams in the entire league, just makes for an exciting brand of basketball. And you know what? I've thought about this a little bit, too. Everyone was hoping the Warriors would take one for the team whenever they made that run to the championship back in the day. You can't just have the same old tired storylines over and over again. These teams that are established and have these sorts of rivalries, they weren't always established. The Warriors, when they first came on the scene, they were just a young upstart. You didn't know what to expect from them. Sure, they had Steph Curry, but at the end of the day, they were still like a quote-unquote small market. I mean, maybe not as small of a market as Sacramento, but you understand, in order for these teams to become these great transcendent sort of squads here that, are put asses in seats, for lack of a better term. I mean, sometimes they got to get there. I mean, they got to get some playoff experience. They got to get some playoff success in order for people to notice them. And you know what? Once they get playoff success, maybe you'll see the Kings being a bigger draw ratings-wise in the second round. Maybe your precious ratings will suffer this year if the Kings win over the Warriors in the first round. But I'll tell you right now, I like new blood better than old tired storylines. So, and here's the thing. They're playing in the second round. Again, they're playing either the Lakers or the Grizzlies. I think either way, if the Kings win, that'll be a fantastic series, no matter who they end up playing. And I think Dylan Brooks will get anybody pissed off. So I think that would be a fun series in the second round if they play Memphis. Be a fun series in the second round if they play the Lakers. And that one might be a knockdown, drag-out series. Let me tell you what, that's going to be interesting based on the health situation of the Grizzlies, but don't want to get too far ahead of myself. That's the next one up on the list. Don't want to get there quite yet. Geez, this nose situation. I don't know why. Maybe my deep voice is just vibrating the shit out of those nose hairs in there and just making it all itching up a storm. But I'll tell you what, man, it's not good. Not good right now. My schnoz is itchy, I will tell you what. But on the court, though, getting away from the tired storylines based, the talk about I care about basketball, not the ratings. I care about a good product on the court. I do not give a damn about your precious ratings when it's all said and done. So we'll put that to the side right now. On the court, though, this is another big problem for the Kings that I think might rear its head and may ultimately lead to the Warriors, much to my chagrin, maybe pulling this series out when it's all said and done. If the Warriors aren't even going to respect Domantas Sabonis on an elbow jumper, I'm not even talking a three-point jumper. I'm talking you get down top of the key. They are Kevon Looney just giving him all the space. Like, hey, go ahead and shoot that thing. If they're going to just leave him open with him still shooting 5 for 17 from the field, that's going to be an issue for the Kings in this series, man. They're going to need Domantas Sabonis to step up big time offensively. He was their most efficient player all season. Sure, only shot 12 shots a game during the regular season, but they're going to need him to step up in a big way from what he did, because you can't expect Malik Monk to go out there and score 32 on 13 shots every night. It's just not a sustainable pace. Domantas Sabonis is the guy that's been consistent all season. He's the guy that should be stepping up when it counts most to go out there and have a good offensive performance, and that is simply not what you saw in Game 1. If he simply cannot shoot, if they're doing the old Ben Simmons defense on him, and it's working at that, it's hard for me to see the Kings ended up winning this series, but hell of a Game 1 win. I am looking forward to seeing what happens for the rest of the series. This one feels like it's going to be a long series, 6, 7. I'd love to see it go 8 games if they would let it go 8 games, but I think this is probably going to be one of the more, really, Western Conference in general, a lot better series in the Western Conference than there are in the Eastern Conference right now. Those top seeds in the East are just beating the absolute shit out of those bottom seeds. So hopefully hopefully we get a nice long series in 3-6 matchup between the Kings and the Warriors going forward. But looking forward to that. Game 2 is tonight as I record this, so that should be fun. I mean, you got Game 2 of the Sixers-Nets as well, which won't be as fun, but hey, that Warriors-Kings, I may not be awake for most of it, but boy, that's going to be a dandy. That's going to be a dandy every single time out there, I would imagine. But let's move on to the 2-7 in the West. The Lakers pulled away late on the back of Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura's big-time shooting performances to take the win 128-112. They steal a game on the road in Game 1 versus the Grizzlies take a 1-0 lead in the Western Conference 2-7 matchup. And Grizzlies might be in trouble, man. Got Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves having the games of their respective lives, shooting a combined 19 of 27, including 8 of 11 from three-point range. Austin Reeves, in particular, monster fourth quarter to help the Lakers pull away. He had a bunch of, I guess he was mic'd up, so he had some good sound bites, just screaming at the top of his lungs after hitting a big three-point shot, hitting another big three or fadeaway. I can't remember exactly what it was, if it was a 2 or a 3. Doesn't really matter. Just, probably the indelible image of the game. Austin Reeves going back down the court as a timeout is called by the Memphis Grizzlies, saying I'm him or I'm here. Hard to tell which one exactly he said. People are running with I'm him, though. So that's Austin Reeves, you are him. And I'll tell you what, one of the most unlikely stories in the entire NBA, Austin Reeves, he's a rookie, undrafted rookie at that, out of Oklahoma. Really efficient offensive guy, really stepped up throughout the course of this year and showed that, basically everyone made a mistake twice in passing up Austin Reeves in the draft. He has been spectacular offensively. And by the way, that performance from Rui Hachimura and Austin Reeves kind of let LeBron and AD essentially hit the cruise control. Obviously, had a bit of a scary situation with AD in the first half, had a stinger, couldn't feel his arm going in the locker room, but came out of halftime, ended up having a solid, productive second half. That won't be an issue going forward for the Lakers here. It's still going to be LeBron and AD, still mostly healthy when it's all said and done out there. So, man, if Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura are playing like this and you still got LeBron and AD on the team, basically just orchestrating the whole thing, it's going to be a long, long series for the Memphis Grizzlies. And meanwhile, Ja Morant got his hand folded up like an accordion, didn't break it, but had a tough time moving it post-game, and also seemed absolutely, easy for me to say, seemed absolutely dejected in his post-game comments, which it's not what you would want to hear from your leader. I'll just put it to you that way. Then you add on top of that the fact that the Grizzlies won't have Brandon Clark or Steven Adams, two big-time front court pieces for Memphis. It's going to be a problem that they've got on their hands going forward here. Jaren Jackson, he stayed out of foul trouble in this one, as I'm itching my nose for the 15,000th time this episode. But again, what are you going to do? Just got an itchy nose, so got to just keep on keeping on here. Jaren Jackson stayed out of foul trouble in this one. They still ended up losing by 16 points, but to his credit, scored 31, was very efficient from the field, but stayed out of foul trouble. I'm not sure that's something that you can count on game in and game out from Jaren Jackson here. That's just simply not how he's played. He is, as one Kirk Goldsberry put it on Pardon My Take last week, he is the living embodiment of a personal foul, or a walking personal foul. He probably gets like 4 or 5 fouls a game. One of the most prolific foul guys in the entire NBA at this point. You can't count on him to have 2 personal fouls for 2 games in a row. It just feels like at some point he's going to get in foul trouble. And who do you turn to whenever Jaren Jackson has to be sat on the bench because he's got 3 fouls in one quarter or something along those lines? This could be a problem. I feel like the Lakers have some momentum building in their favor. It feels like they got the edge. Obviously, they stole a game in game 1 on the road. That's really all they needed to do. And now, if it goes 7 games, they just need to win all their home games, and they are off home free when it's all said and done. It would go 6 games if they win all their home games, but still, the Memphis Grizzlies are in trouble right now. That's the bottom line here. This should be an interesting series going forward, especially if Ja Morant isn't totally healthy, because I think the one that he sprained or folded up like an accordion, you know what I'm talking about, that hand, It might have been in his shooting hand too, so this could end up flipping in a big way to where the Lakers just pull away in this series. This might be one of the most interesting matchups in the first round, if not maybe the most competitive. I don't know what's going to happen here. I think the Lakers might end up pulling away with this one, maybe winning 5 or 6 if LeBron steps on the gas a little. LeBron and AD step on the gas a little bit. Neither of them shot 20 shots in this game. No one on the Lakers shot 20 shots at all in this game, and I just don't think that's going to happen throughout the course of this one. Like I said, the Grizzlies might be in trouble going forward here. I had to take a break there and take a quick sip of my carbonated caffeinated beverage there, no free ads, and also do some heavy-duty itching of this nose of mine. I don't know what's up. I don't know why it does the things it does, but hopefully that'll keep the itching at bay for at least a little bit longer here. But hey, let's get into the Heat versus the Bucks, a surprisingly interesting game. The Heat stole game 1, 130 to 117 on a massive shooting performance, and an injury to Giannis to take a 1-0 lead in that 1-8 Eastern Conference matchup. Unlikely as it may be, I thought the Bucks, well, I also thought Giannis would be in there the whole time. I thought the Bucks were going to win by like 30 in this game. I didn't really think that highly of the Heat. They're not very good on the road, and sure, it's Spoelstra, it's Butler in a playoff setting, but at the same time, Giannis with the Bucks is just an unstoppable force that I thought they would just run straight through the Heat. I thought they'd win this one in 4. Obviously, that is not the case here. I mean, weird game in this one. The Heat had their best shooting performance of the entire season. I mean, not a single better shooting performance that they had all year, and they just did it at the best possible time. Also had Giannis Antetokounmpo going out early with a lower back injury. X-rays were negative, so there's optimism that he'll be back for game 2, but he was absent for most of game 1. Went out in the first quarter, tried to make an effort to get back on the court in the second quarter, but just did not work out. The back was just locking up on him. It looked like he just was not moving around quite right out there. So I just kept waiting, though. I mean, the Heat, like I said before, one of the worst shooting teams in the entire NBA. I thought for sure. I was just waiting for them to cool off there at some point and for Milwaukee to make a run, but it just never really happened. The Heat were on fire in this game, no pun intended, but just, they ended up pulling away in the fourth quarter. They stole game 1. We'll see if that's sustainable in game 2. My hunch is that it's not, but we'll have to wait and see on that. Tough break for them, though. Again, no pun intended. I'm just firing out puns here. Again, fire with the Heat. We are on fire with unintentional puns right now, but a little bit more serious on this one. Tyler Hero, I don't know if it's necessarily official that he's going to miss the rest of the series, but he broke his shooting hand while he was sustained. I totally messed up the bullet point there, but he sustained a broken hand while he was diving for a loose ball on a steal in the second half. I think he also ended up shooting a three-pointer, and I want to say he might have made it as well. Either that or he just got the shot up there, and the announcers were all impressed because of his toughness, but looked immediately like he did something to the hand. He came off almost right away after shooting that three-pointer and did not return. He has a broken hand. I don't know if he'll return for the series, but even if he does, broken shooting hand is not something that you just come back from and play with like it's nothing. So I can't imagine that's going to have no effect on how the Heat play in this series. That loss is going to make it extra hard for the Heat to pull off a series upset. Unfortunately, could have been very interesting if Tyler Hero was healthy in this one and Giannis not quite so much, but the health of Giannis, getting back to that, and the fact that the Heat stole a road game already, made the series a lot more interesting than it appeared coming in, and this is going to be one to watch. I mean, really, outside of those top two in the East, the Celtics and the 76ers, they're probably going to beat the absolute shit out of the teams they're playing. Outside of that, though, Eastern Conference, very interesting from top to bottom over there. It's going to be a fun first round of the playoffs overall. Let's ping pong back to the West, to the probably the best matchup in the Western Conference right now, the 4-5 matchup between the Clippers and the Suns. Easy for me to remember there, I suppose. But hey, Kawhi dominated to lead the Clippers to a 115-110 win over the Suns in Game 1. They steal a game on the road in this series, and Kawhi Leonard just went out of his mind. best game of the day on Sunday. And much like the 4-5 on the other side, like I said, I think this series is going to be an absolute banger. I feel like this one is going to go the distance, probably 5 or not 5, 6, 7 games or something like that. It should be a fun one. Kawhi Leonard is just a scoring machine, though. He can do just about everything. He picks the defense apart like just about no one else on the court. I mean, just a tactical surgeon when it comes to just dismantling a defense. He scored 38 in this one. The Suns didn't have a terrible game, but overall, there were stretches where KD just refused to shoot, and that cannot happen if the Phoenix Suns want to win this series. KD didn't attempt a shot at all in the third quarter. I mean, he passed it around with the best of them, but that's just, KD is the best player on this team. Plain and simple, you cannot have him doing that. You can't have him just disappearing for whole stretches of the game. You're just not going to win games that way. But it ended up coming right down to a defensive play by Russell Westbrook, who was just straight bad. I mean, no two ways about it. Terrible on the offensive side, but he blocked a layup by Devin Booker in the final minute that would have made it a 1-point game, and that basically sealed the game for the Clippers. That was the edge that won them the game, and crucially, steal a game on the road to open up the series. Like I said, this one should go 6 or 7. It's going to be a hell of a duel. The Suns need KD to step up, though, a little bit more, which is weird to say because he did still score 27 in this one. He wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but you just can't have a whole quarter in the third where you just completely disappear. Hell, in the first quarter, he only had 4 points. Really, the second and the fourth quarters were the ones where he really made his hay, really made an impact on the court. He's got to be a little bit more consistent throughout here if they want to go all the way to the not just the conference finals, but the NBA finals like I predicted them to. You know, selfishly, I'm kind of rooting for that, so I sound nice and smart when it's gets right down to it. But even without that, I'd like to see KD playing in the second round versus, well, it's probably going to be Denver. We'll get to that in just a second. But you know what? I just want to see KD playing at the top of his abilities. Wasn't quite what we saw on Sunday night. Going to be interesting to see how this one unfolds. Like I said, probably a 6 or 7 game series between them and the Clippers, and I am looking forward to seeing how this one progresses going forward. Last game of the first round slate as it stands right now. Last of the game ones, if you will. The Nuggets took care of business in game one of the 1-8 Western Conference matchup, winning 109-80, just beating the piss out of the T-Wolves to take a 1-0 lead. And really, we're at what? Let's look at the time here. About just under an hour right now, like 48 minutes. Already spent too much time on the NBA, so no need to waste even more speculating on this series. Denver has struggled at times on the stretch of this season, make no mistake about it, but they're head and shoulders above the T-Wolves. They should take care of business here. I could definitely see Minnesota getting hot, winning a game or two here and there. I mean, they do have Anthony Edwards, they do have Karl Anthony Towns, two very explosive offensive players when they're hot, so could it happen? Yes. But I don't see this going past 6, even in the wildest of worst-case scenarios. Obviously, again, outside of an injury to Jokic or whoever else is in that lineup, that is crucial to them, be it Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., to a lesser extent, Aaron Gordon, not Eric Gordon, Aaron Gordon. I don't see this one going past 6 games. I'll just put it that way. The Nuggets need a deep playoff run more than just about any other team in the entire playoff field. East or Western Conference, don't matter. The Nuggets have been underperformers in the past, and if they underperform again, big changes are coming. These guys are playing with their backs up against the wall. Even as the 1 seed, they're playing with their backs up against the wall. Anything less than a Western Conference Finals berth, probably going to be a disappointment, which is kind of awkward when you consider you're maybe playing the Suns in the second round, who have possibly the best team in the entire Western Conference right now. That's going to get interesting in the future if they get there, but first things first, I don't think they'll let the T-Wolves stand in the way of that run. Not in the first round anyways. That would be an abject disaster. I see the Suns probably taking this one home in 5, maybe 6 if the T-Wolves get lucky, but there you have it. I mean, first games of the first round wrapped up. The play-in tournament's wrapped up. Now that we don't have to go through the play-in tournament, Might be a little bit more streamlined sort of update here going forward. Maybe I don't spend 50 minutes on the NBA in future episodes, so that could be cool. With that though, let's get back into my wheelhouse here. We are talking about the NFL and the football headlines. We got some big ones coming up for you, and I've got it. I mean, it's not something you guys can see because it's not, I'm not putting this on the YouTube video, but ESPN and basically every website has these weird clickbait articles that are like sponsored at the bottom. This one, I mean, if anyone clicks on this, they got to know this is a scam. The headline is "Breakthrough Military Device Melts Fat and Builds Muscle Fast," and the the picture to go with the headline is just like a jacked dude. I guess he's probably in the military or something like that. I would imagine. He's got camo pants on, so he's either a model posing in camo pants or he's a legit military dude. And he's also wearing dog tags, so I'm guessing he's doing PT or something. He's just one of those attractive military guys, just jacked out of his mind. That's not really what I'm focusing on though. Whoever made this thumbnail picture thing, they just they just photoshopped like a hair scrunchie or like a hair clip, like one of those jaw clips, like just on top of this dude's abs, and they expect you to believe that is the muscle building, fat burning device. Who clicks on these things, man? I don't know what the hell's going on there, but I digress. We don't have a whole lot of time to mess around with all that sort of stuff. Let's get to some quick headlines here. First and foremost, this one came across the docket really as I was about to start recording, about an hour here before I recorded, right before I hopped in the shower. Eagles signed Jalen Hurts to a 5-year extension. It is 5 years, $255 million, 179.3 of that guaranteed. First Eagles player, in fact, to have a full no-trade clause in the history of the franchise. Big time deal for Howie Roseman and the Eagles getting this thing done. This is how you get a deal done and avoid the drama like you're seeing with the Baltimore Ravens over there with Lamar Jackson. And you know what? It just kind of, you knew this was coming. The Eagles just kind of did this better than just about everyone else. Howie Roseman doesn't mess around when he wants to get a deal done. He's willing to make concessions here and there just so we can get this thing done and keep it moving so we can focus on different stuff. I think he obviously wanted this thing done before the draft so he could focus on that, because the draft really has been a lot of the bread and butter for the Eagles here. They're very good at drafting players, very, very good at culture to develop players in. So it's one that I'm sure he wanted to get done. He wanted to have it out of sight, out of mind going into the draft. And Jalen Hurts got a sweet deal out of this thing. I mean, 51 a year, essentially. Obviously, a big quarterback contract. Not going to have as much cap flexibility, but get out of here. If you have a great quarterback, you don't let this get down the line, because the price is only going to go up. And that's what's happening here with Lamar Jackson. The more young QBs sign big-time deals here, big-time extensions, the more that price is just going to creep up and up and up. And this was something I saw, I think it was from Ari Mirov on Twitter, I don't know if he made the point or just made the observation. Just made the observation. Sorry, that carbonated drink really coming back to bite me in the ass here, but I digress. Whenever this whole thing was first going on with Lamar Jackson and they couldn't come to terms, I think the highest paid quarterback in the league was Patrick Mahomes at $45 million. Dak Prescott was next at $40 million. Now you got Daniel Jones making $45 a year. You just got Jalen Hurts signing a $51 million a year contract. You got Joey Burrow, Justin Herbert working on a contract extension. I assume he's going to be a market setter as well. The price is just climbing and climbing and climbing for Lamar Jackson right now, and I am unsure how that ends. I still think the Ravens signing Odell Beckham Jr. is a pretty good sign that they're serious about bringing Lamar Jackson back. Either that or they're overconfident about him signing that franchise tender. Either way, it just gets harder and harder for the Ravens to re-sign Lamar Jackson financially at this point, and it's only going to get even more difficult for him. But hey, Eagles, very good guy to lock in right there, and they're locking him in as soon as possible so you don't have to pay an exorbitant price in a year or so whenever it's all said and done. Or at the end of this offseason, when I assume Justin Herbert and the Chargers are going to get something done at some point this offseason. I would imagine the the negotiations have already started. I assume they're ongoing, and I would imagine they're going to get that thing done sooner rather than later. And I'm sure part of that is just Justin Herbert having an agent and having that go through so they can kind of, hammer out a deal faster. Part of that is just lack of stubbornness on the organizational side. There's blame on both sides here in this Ravens situation, but every time a quarterback signs a new deal, a market-setting deal, like I said, the price is just going to go up and up and up for Lamar Jackson, and this is just, it's getting slowly more and more uncomfortable over there, and I'm looking forward to seeing a resolution on this, because I'm honestly getting a little bit tired of talking about the speculation for Lamar Jackson and literally nothing happened. This will probably be the last time we talk about it up until the draft. Or afterwards, and unless, they come out there and give him a big-time contract extension going into the draft or something like that. Until then, or if someone else gets a contract extension between now and then, until then, we're just going to put a pin in that and move on to the next headline here. We have got Dan Snyder. He has agreed in principle to sell the commies to the group led by Sixers owner Josh Harris. He was the leader in the clubhouse last week, and he strengthened that bid. There was a little bit of a bidding war there at the end. I think Steve Apostolopoulos, however the hell you pronounce his name, Canadian billionaire, doesn't sound Canadian, but Canadian billionaire over there. I think it was like just below $6 billion was the original reported, and there was a bit of a bidding war there at the end where eventually Josh Harris edged that thing over $6 billion. I think it was like $6.05 billion was the strike price there. And still, it's a non-exclusive agreement, so anyone can swoop in and be like, hey, we'll pay you $7. Someone tried to do that, but forget the guy's name. Just go look up the guy that swooped in last second, tried to give a $7 billion offer for the Commanders. Go look up his Arif Hassan specifically for, I believe it was Pro Football Network he was writing for. Did a really good in-depth write-up of the guy that tried to swoop in last second and buy the Commanders out from under Josh Harris. Just go do yourself a favor. Read that article on that guy's history of business operations. That screaming scammer all over that guy's resume. But the long-running nightmare in D.C. is almost over. Josh Harris looks poised, pending a league vote at the meetings in May. No reason for me to believe that it won't go through. Probably mostly unanimously. I would imagine. It looks like Dan Snyder finally on the way out the door in DC, and it's almost time to pop the champagne bottles over there, boys and girls. You're almost released from this long-running hostage situation that you've been in since the late 90s at this point. Hey, good for Dan Snyder for getting all sorts of windfall on this sale, but even better for the people of DC that they are no longer trapped by this absolute miser, one of the worst owners in the history of the NFL. The only thing that really separates him from Donald Sterling is the fact that he didn't talk about, just sling racial slurs around in a recorded conversation, at least not so much as we know, because not saying that he doesn't probably think those sorts of things, but he's too smart to be caught on tape saying those sorts of things when it's all said and done. And you know what? On the way out the door, Happy Thanksgiving. That's all I got to say. One of the endearing and indelible quotes from Dan Snyder throughout the course of his career as an owner of the Washington football team, commies, racial slurs, all sorts of arrows that they went through with that absolute terrible person at the helm. And it's time to celebrate, everybody. It's time to celebrate. Dan Snyder, he's not dead, but he might as well be dead to that city because he ain't never going to be welcome back there ever again. But on the football field, Falcons keep loading up on defenders. They trade for cornerback Jeff Okudah from the Lions and sign linebacker Bud Dupree to a one-year deal as well. They've signed about 1 million defenders this offseason. It was a big area of need. They've been porous the last couple years under Arthur Smith on that side of the ball, which is kind of unfortunate given how much better than expected the offense has been in those years under Arthur Smith. But the strategy right now is clear in Atlanta. It is this: sign as many defenders as they possibly can to shore up that side of the ball and let Arthur Smith figure the rest out on offense. And honestly, I think that could be a strategy that really pays some big dividends for them throughout the course of this season. I'm interested to see what this team looks like. I think they're probably going to spend some assets in the draft, probably drafting a wide receiver or two, maybe get an offensive lineman there for depth. maybe add a second. I think they might have actually already added a second tight end. I might be wrong on that. Free agency is just a blur here, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm not entirely sure what they've added on the offensive side of the ball. I think they probably add a few more pieces in the draft, though. Maybe add a running back in there. Never a bad idea when you're in that sort of system that Arthur Smith runs. But this strategy, I think it could end up being a playoff strategy. And really, you look at that NFC South, every team outside of the Bucs is really improving here in this offseason. It could be a lot better than it was last season. Can't get a whole lot worse if we're being honest. So happy to see that division elevating itself a little bit from where they were last year. I am very intrigued to see what this strategy yields for the Falcons. It's all going to hinge on how good Desmond Ridder is this year. How well has he developed throughout the course of this offseason as the presumptive number one guy at quarterback? That's going to be the determinant on how deep this team can go, whether they win the division, whether they get a playoff spot, how far they go in the playoff spot. It's all going to be on Desmond Ridder's shoulders, and I'm looking forward to seeing it, quite frankly. I mean, it's a damn shame I got to wait 4 or 5 months to actually see the fruits of all that labor, but you know what? I'm on the edge of my seat, giddy, waiting to see it happen. So hopefully, you know what? Hopefully we get some answers to that as the season starts up here in 5 months or so. But up next, we have got the Bucs linebacker Devin White and Cardinals safety Budda Baker both going public with trade requests. Neither look like they're really going to be traded, though. I mean, Devin White maybe because he's going into the fifth-year option year. I think this is his 5th year. They picked up his 5th-year option, and contract talks have been slow at best over there. So that's kind of the impetus for why Devin White requested a trade. It's kind of a similar deal with Budda Baker. Budda Baker's looking for his second contract as well. Or maybe it's his third, not his third contract, it's his second contract as well. Looking for a new deal. I believe this was around Super Bowl time, if not shortly thereafter. He went to the front office and asked hey, either pay me or trade me. And obviously that was a trade request back then. Didn't come public with it for another 2 months or so until right about now. So either way, I don't really see the Cardinals trading Budda Baker. He's way too valuable for that defense that already lost Byron Murphy in free agency. And I believe they lost a couple other free agents in free agency as well. Devin White for the Bucs. Again, they're probably going to try and keep him around. He's just too good. I mean, he's an off-ball linebacker, so the price tag might not be exactly what Devin White is looking for. But I would imagine they're going to do the full court press on Devin White. If nothing else, if things really aren't working out for him and they can't get a deal done before training camp, maybe you see Devin White move at the trade deadline. That's about the worst case scenario, though. I don't really see him going anywhere. And Budda Baker, he's just too valuable for that defense. I feel like, and I think he might still be under contract after this year. So it feels like both of these situations not going to have a whole lot of movement for quite some time on that, unless a team just swoops in and gives them an offer that they simply can't refuse. I don't really see this working out in a way that both or either of these players get traded before even the trade deadline. So just, it's news, had to talk about it, but I don't see a whole lot of movement happening. And rounding off this show, bunch of quick rapid fire headlines on the way out here because I spent so much time on the NBA, but the Texans apparently might not take a QB in this draft. And you know what? Adam Schefter put out this little nugget last week saying the Texans might not take a quarterback. And the NFL media, obviously, it's a downtime for the NFL media between, combine and draft. You got all sorts of top 30 visits going on where guys are just going around visiting teams. Not really a whole lot is actually happening because you look at the Colts. They've had every single quarterback, either scheduled to visit or already visited their facility, even like Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, who I am here to tell you will not make it to 4 or 5, wherever the Colts pick. They're not going to make it down to that point, but they're visiting with the Colts anyway, so I'm not really buying into that one too much. And you know what? Talking about the Texans maybe not taking a QB like they were expected to, a little bit more interesting than whatever else you could be talking about. So yeah, NFL media ran with it for the sake of filling time. I understand. You got to do what you got to do at this time of year. And you know what? You got full 24/7 of content to get through and put on the TV. So I understand what you got to fill some time. You got to do what you got to do at this time of year. But And I don't doubt that Adam Schefter's sources did tell him this information. But I'll also tell you, and we've been over this time and time again, I talked about it in relation to some of the prospects in pro days and whatnot, which, by the way, if you want to hear about the truth of pro days and how they're utterly meaningless, go to the YouTube clip I posted a couple weeks ago about it. It's still applicable right now. And there was a nugget I said in there that it holds true in this situation. Every piece of information, it's quote-unquote insider information, that comes out now is coming out for a reason. Everyone expects the Texans to take a quarterback at number 2. There's no reason not to expect the Texans to take a quarterback up at number 2. So what do you do to sow a little bit of uncertainty? Maybe you drum up a little bit of a trade market. Maybe you say, I don't feel like taking a quarterback here. Maybe we'll go with Will Anderson. Maybe we'll go with Jalen Carter. We'll go with one of those other big time defenders. We'll see what happens there. And you know what? Again, I can't. I'm not going to discount that someone told Adam Schefter this. What I am going to discount is that this is a bluff. This reeks of a bluff. The Texans are probably going to stay put. They're probably going to take a quarterback at number 2. Again, unless they just get a package that blows them out of the water and they get all sorts of assets for someone to move up to number 2 and take a quarterback. I just don't see them not taking a quarterback. If they stay pat at 2, they're going to take a quarterback. Again, keep in mind, just because you hear it and just because it's a quote-unquote possibility that a legitimate, credible source told one of these insiders does not mean that information is not getting out for a reason. And there is a reason here. They're trying to muddy the waters, drum up a little bit of a market, drum up a little bit of uncertainty when it comes to who they're going to take at number 2, because right now everyone just assumes it's going to be either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. Just close your eyes, take the top quarterback if that ends up being the case there, and they stay pat at number 2. It's a big old nothing story, but I wanted to address it because, again, don't be fooled. This is lying season, folks. This is the prime time lying season, and these executives are going to look you in your eyes and tell you the sky is purple when in fact it is blue. Don't take my word for it. Just go back, look at the history of the league. This is how this time of year operates right now. Don't believe just about anything you hear from any camp right now, because there is a reason the information is getting out. And with that, you know what? I think we kept it to a reasonable amount of time. Well, really, we breezed right through those NFL headlines. We really got pushing about an hour 10 right now. So good time to end off here. If you enjoyed, that's all for this episode, by the way. If you enjoyed, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating so we can grow this bad boy a little bit. If you didn't enjoy it, take that opinion to the grave. Tell people you loved it anyways, because we're trying to grow this bad boy. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I cannot say it enough. Subscribe to that YouTube channel. I'm going to be posting a few more episodes or a few more clips every time out there. Might be a decreasing frequency of those clips as we go on here. Jesus Christ, my nose will not stop itching. What else is new for this episode? The attack of the itchy nose might be in the title here, but I digress once again on that front. Just subscribe to the YouTube channel. Might be decreasing the volume a little bit here on the clips just because it's becoming a hectic time looking for a job right now, but going to keep trying to grow that thing a little bit more. I release 1 episode per week until football is back in full swing during the offseason. No telling what I'll really get into in the episode here. Could be good, could be terrible. Tune in to find out, I suppose. I think this was pretty much a middling episode. I don't think this was my best episode. Wasn't my worst episode, though, so I'll take that for right now. Follow me on all my socials at Caleb Burzik as I scratch my nose once again. Link will be in the description, so you have to spell my fucked up Eastern Bloc name. If you want to contact the show, though, shoot me an email at unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. That's unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. Or just shoot me a DM on Twitter. I'll probably be a lot more responsive if you shoot me the DM on Twitter. Just put business or show in all caps in the subject line if you do choose to go the email route, so I can categorize you accordingly. Not that it really matters. I don't get a whole lot of emails in that avenue anyways, so I'll see you right away in all likelihood when it comes into that inbox. Anyways, thank you so much for tuning in to Unqualified Analysis, and as always, I've really got no clue what I'm talking about. I'm just talking out of my ass for about an hour and some change, but one thing I learned this week: the largest black hole ever discovered is at the center of the galaxy, Home A. I want to say it's Home A because I heard it on this podcast and I looked it up online. Usually the podcast has some very reliable information, and there wasn't a correction, so I have no reason to think it's false now, but I looked it up on Google and I could not find the Home A galaxy and this one. So apologies if this is not correct, but the black hole at the center of Home A is, get this, 40 billion times, 40 billion with a B, times the mass equivalent of our sun. That's all, right? I mean, just you can't even conceptualize how big that black hole is. So I will leave you with that mind-boggling thought of just how small and insignificant all your problems are in the context of the universe. See y'all.